Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Dane Zorko here from the Brisbane Lions.
Jason Johannesson from the Western Bulldogs.
Luke Parker here from the Sydney Swans.
It's Roy Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Max Orr, Melbourne Football Club.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. Another huge week of fantasy footy to talk through. It is nice to be with you, and a lot that we got to get through in this episode as we head to yet another extended round of footy. Kicks off Thursday night, but goes right through till Monday. So there's going to be some unknowns in terms of our teams and moves that we make as we head into round 7. Joining me this week, yet again, I got Kane. Hello, buddy.
Hello, MJ.
It's nice to have you, and there is a lot that has come up just over the past 24, 48 hours, and we'll talk about the double downgrade and whether or not the infamous Simpson-Rankin move is exactly where we should be looking this week. We'll talk about the fixture and what the implications of these 30-odd games in 19 days looks like in a moment, but straight out of the gate, one of the things that's not getting as much talk and conversation in the fantasy community this week as it should is the fact that as we sit now just hours away from the first part of our lockout with the Thursday night games, we know Collingwood and Geelong players are going to get locked down, but the Monday night game throws an absolute spanner in a couple of teams' plans, doesn't it? Because we won't know what the Crows and the Saints are choosing to do at least till 3 or 4 games have completed.
Yeah, it's really interesting, MJ. The way this round is structured in general, I feel like the days teams are playing just makes this whole thing super interesting. We've seen a couple debutants already named for this round in Ned Cahill and Cody Waitman, but one a forward and one a mid forward. So ideally, like we had last week, we'd love to see how these guys go and gauge how necessary or how interesting they are to us. But the problem we have is Sam Simpson, for instance, plays tonight as we record this podcast. So if you want him, you're going to have to make this move, like you said, without seeing the squads for Sunday cut down and even the teams at all for Monday. And we know if you've got any Saints players, Ratton's come out super strong that he's going to shake up that side after Freo pulled off an incredible victory. Yeah. It
makes so much unique challenges, and then you add compounded into that. Last night, on a Wednesday evening at AFL.com.au, it was announced by Travis Auld that 33 matches are going to be played across 19 consecutive days. They're just trying to fast-track the football season, and understandably so, but it really does mean that rounds 9 to round 12 are going to be jam-packed in. They kick off on Wednesday, the 29th of July, just 2 days after round 8 completes. So what we do know, and it's hard to know exactly what's fully going to happen until we see the fixture, but what they have said is 6 clubs will be given buys in that period, with another 10 clubs to be given a buy before the conclusion of the home and away season. The only one thing we do know about which clubs are where and what it all means is that Essendon and Melbourne won't be one of the initial 6 clubs, because the AFL have deemed that when they missed that week due to the COVID scare around Connor McKenna, they've deemed to have that. So outside of those 2 clubs, there are potentially 16 teams that could fit into these 6 that are going to come into this first week of multi-bye rounds.
And MJ, that's what makes this conundrum of the double downgrade super interesting, because like you mentioned, the only 2 teams we know that won't have a bye are Melbourne and Essendon. Yep. So inherently there's a massive advantage in those players already. Yep. If you know, and obviously at the time of recording, we don't know what the format's going to change to. Are we going to go to a best 18? Are we going to get more trades? So we can't really give any advice on that because we just don't know. But what we do know is that Melbourne players, and there are a lot of coaches, especially in SuperCoach, that don't have Max Gawn. Yeah. So if you know that you can get him in without the worry of a bye, that is a massive advantage, because what concerns me for people that want to upgrade this week is if you bring in a player, let's say you bring in a Bailey Smith, and the Bulldogs get given the bye in round 9. Yeah. You brought him in
for 2 weeks.
His price is for 2 weeks, and his price won't really change that much at all. We know that next week's probably going to be his bottom of his price. You know, he's got a 132 break even. So as good as he played on the weekend, he was just shy of 120. Even if he did that again,
In
maybe he
SuperCoach,
loses 5K, but the following week, if you get him for 1 week and then he's got a bye, you'd be better off waiting 2 weeks for him to have the bye, even if his price goes up, say,
20K
15
more.
or 20,000. Yeah, so you've got to – that's the thing. When I saw that fixture come out and I saw what they said, 6 teams will play in those 4 rounds. They'll have a bye and then in that period. And then the other 10, we don't know how they'll be drafted out. But we do know that Melbourne and Essendon are clear of their bye.
Yeah.
So my instant reaction was, we've got 2 great downgrade options. Maybe we are best to take those downgrade options while they present themselves. And then next week, we've been told we'll have the fixture early next week. So then we can actually plan, okay, when do I want to hit that upgrade? As I said, if I use Bailey Smith as an example, if the Bulldogs have that round 9 bye, now all of a sudden I'm thinking, all right, great. Bailey Smith round 10, he's cleared his bye. I've got him for the rest of the year. Obviously, we don't know how clubs will manage, 4.5 day breaks on average for a So that's what makes me, at a first glance, without getting into all the other information that's come to hand, I think maybe it is best while we've got 2, at the very least, good cows.
Yep.
Let's just get that in our team. Albeit a lot of sides will have 200, 300, maybe even up to 500K in the bank if they did a downgrade last week as well.
Yeah.
But at least at that point, we have some visibility on how the rest of the season plays out, not just in a fixture and a buy sense, but obviously from the rule makers of DreamTeam, AFLFantasy and SuperCoach, which can make us an informed decision. Because as I said, if you bring in a Bailey Smith and he is that guy that cops a round 9 bye with his Bulldogs teammates, you're going to be pretty disappointed because, like I said, there's a lot of other teams then that are going to be all over him once he's cleared that bye.
Yeah. It looks like what we're going to get is 2 teams are going to be on a bye every single week. Using, 6 teams over that 3-week period, 2 teams are going to get a week off from there. Then we're going to get to the end of round 12. A further 10 teams are going to need to have a bye in that kind of 5-week stretch. So what we are seeing is that while we don't know the exact details of how, as you've said, the formats are going to choose to approach it, and we want to talk about some potential ways they might. Again, it's hypothetical. We might be bang on, or we could be so far off what the formats are thinking. And I don't envy the decision makers and the moves they've got to make to help us get through the 2020 season. But what it does appear clear is that from round 9 beyond, 2 AFL teams a week are going to be missing from our squads. And that's a huge thing to consider because if for whatever reason they are 2 highly fantasy relevant teams, like if you get a Brisbane and a Collingwood or a GWS and a Bulldogs, for example, like those, some teams are going to get absolutely crushed under the weight of the lack of premium. So I suppose the one positive, Kane, is multi-buy rounds and potentially how the formats choose to navigate it. We might see some pretty drastic swings in ratings and rankings for coaches.
Oh, you'd have to say that for sure, MJ. And the other thing that makes a double downgrade so difficult, and we spoke about it last week, is if you go a double downgrade and there is a good rookie the next week that you want to grab, which is why I said it's so challenging having Sam Simpson play on a Thursday because you don't know what a Cody Waitman might do. He might have a 100-point performance, and you go, well, I want him. But now you're sitting on 500K in the bank, and you had banked 2 upgrades, and now you think he's important, and your bank keeps going up, and you're not reinvesting those points on the field. That's why last week I was so heavily pushing for if you have the cash to do it, get those points back on the field, albeit Simpson and Rankin scored like premiums last week. I don't think it's going to happen every week.
No.
I think the expectation for these guys in a SuperCoach format is around the 60 mark. If you're getting 60s from them at that price, and even if they go at 50s, MJ, they're going to make 100K in 2 weeks, which we know when you look at the Tyler Browns, Buderiks, a lot of guys, that's not a small amount of cash, especially if that's in a quick 2-week period. That gives you a lot of flexibility going forward. The difficult part I mentioned of 2 downgrades is that if you get a premium injury, for instance, coaches with the news, John Segler's just come out that he had a broken toe.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, you're trying to work out how do I get those points back on the field? Because as I mentioned, if you double downgrade this week with the intention of going up 2 rookies to 2 premium players, just say that's your intention. You're going to go Tyler Brown and Buderick to Lockie Whitfield and Bailey Smith.
Sure.
That's your plan. If you lose Patrick Cripps to a shoulder injury and he's out for the year, now all of a sudden you're going to have to go Cripps to a premium. That's one sideways move.
Yep.
And then you'll go one rookie up to a premium. That's the challenge with the double downgrade is you need an opportunity on the back end to actually pull off that double upgrade. And at the rate of injuries we're seeing, and Segler's the latest today that has quite a bit of fantasy relevance.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you start thinking, well, now I'm just fielding another rookie.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to just bite the bullet and say, as good as Rankin and Simpson were, I think for this week, they are the clear two rookies.
Yes.
I know McPherson's got a lot of love. Challenge with him is Monday night game, so you're probably going to have to make some moves a little bit blind,
Yep.
which is always a massive risk.
Yep.
I thought Will Day was sensational, but who knows how Hawthorn's structure up, and he has got a slight body, albeit he scored terrifically and played great football as well.
Yep.
I know some people even like what Mitch Hibberd did,
Yeah.
his price, and obviously Dylan Shields out suspended. But as I said, it's not as easy as you think with the carnage we've been dealing with to say, I'm going to do two upgrades. Because, as I mentioned, if you get that injury, now all of a sudden you're trying to wrestle with a premium and you've just had one more week where you've fielded a rookie.
Yep.
That's why, for me, it's a really tricky decision because, like I mentioned at the top, MJ, I don't want to trade into a premium that will have a buy.
No.
But on the flip side, I want to future-proof my team and have premiums on the field as quickly as possible because, like I said, if an injury happens the following week, I'm still building the team. I'm still going forward. Whereas so every week that you sit on 250, 300K, and as I mentioned, some of it will be out of your control. It will be injury-related and you have to replace.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, that's just another week where that person that did the premium up has another week of premiums ahead of you.
Yeah. And that 50 to 100 points in 1 week, maybe not so bad. But if 2 to 3 weeks that continues to grow, and then 2 or 3 other things don't go your way, like a perfect example, if you put the captaincy on Brodie Grundy last week, and for whatever, fair enough, he's generally been pretty good, didn't have a great week last week, as opposed to some of the other premiums that scored incredibly well, there's a 50, 60 point gap right there. That gets compounded by you've had to field an extra rookie. That's 100 points lost by just one decision and a little bit of luck. If that continues on year in, week out, then it gets incredibly difficult for us to navigate. Because you're right, Kane, the challenge for coaches is now that we are flying blind with the decisions we make this week. We've known that we're going to get every team would play each other. So we knew the hyped Matt DeBoer tag, which is heading towards Lachie Neale this week. We knew that was coming for certain teams and we knew it wasn't. Now we don't know. The two teams that are likely to take a week off every single week from now till the end of the home and away season is huge. For fantasy finals, what are the two teams that aren't playing in that finals run, those final 4 weeks? You don't want anything to do with a premium that's got a finals, or the grand final week of our year. We want nothing to do with those premiums in our side, but they might be really helpful and valuable between now and then. And then you throw in the mix of how are the formats going to navigate this period of time? Do they go to a best 18? Do they increase the amount of trades that we have in our bank, let alone increase the amount we could use every single week? This week's, it feels like luck's going to give us a, I don't know. I feel like so much of the decisions you make this week, luck's just going to need to go your way. As good as a coach you are, you could just make some calls and then it just not fall your way. And for others, they go, I'm going the upgrade. I'm just going to take the points on field. And if I cop the guy in the round 9 or row 10 by, so be it. But I'm just wanting as many points on field as quickly as possible. Conversely, as you've said, I'll just take the cash. I'll hope I get the luck with no injuries for a week or two so that I can do 2 or 3 upgrades. It's a fascinating week to see what coaches do.
Yeah, that's the thing, MJ. There's equal forces in my mind pulling me either direction. As I mentioned earlier, one hand I'm thinking, take these 2 rookies that have shown incredible scoring potential, albeit I don't think they'll replicate those scores very often. But as I mentioned, even 250s now for 2 weeks gets you 100K.
Yeah.
And we know if they continue to play even semi-regularly after that, we're going to get to around that 300K mark, which we sort of need them to get to if we're going to trade in a quality player. You can't just keep taking a 250K guy down and then up. You're not even going to have 400K to spend. Then on the flip side, like you mentioned, if you grab a premium this week and obviously they score how you think they'll score, and let's just say you make 50 points on instead of fielding a rookie.
Yeah.
And then you get given extra trades the next week.
Yeah.
Well, now all of a sudden, you can probably keep pace with those guys that were going to do a double upgrade anyway.
Correct.
And now you just stay ahead of the pack. That's the really challenging thing in my mind is that, as I mentioned, the premium that you pick, though,
Has to score.
has to score well. And then, albeit, you're also hoping that they have a later buy in the year.
Yeah.
Because as I keep using Bailey Smith as an example, is you trade him in and he has a buy in round 9, now everyone else is going to wait a week. You're going to have to wrestle with how do we cover Bailey Smith? As I said, is it a best 18? Is it you just have to suck it up?
Yeah.
So that's the hard part is unless you're trading in, and this is where Melbourne and Essendon players have great value. You
Yes.
go to a Melbourne and Essendon premium, well, guess what? You don't have that stress.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that. And that's where I feel like the Ridleys, the Olivers, the Gorns, Zach Merritt's you just almost have to wait on him because his price is going to come down so much.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
In 2 weeks. But those sort of guys, like if you're not a Gorn owner and you can swing things that you can get him in this week,
Yeah.
and you have that confidence of knowing that he doesn't have a buy, because that's the risk that's stopping me because I'm thinking, do I want to grab a Bailey Smith? But then I'm worried about this early buy.
Yeah.
And so that's what, it's obviously always, we always say, MJ, so team dependent, but these forces pulling both directions. And that's why I keep bringing up, if Simpson was playing on Saturday night, we got to look at Waitman. We got to look at
Correct.
Cahill. We got to look at whoever else came. We could say, okay, they scored 30s. Yep, I'm going to take the double downgrade this week and go up next week because there's not really a rookie that I think I need to have. But as I mentioned, you won't have that luxury with Simpson. So, for instance, if you took Simpson and then, a Cahill or a Waitman on Friday night scored well, you might think, well, maybe I will do the upgrade and I'll just take a chance and miss Isaac Rankin.
Yeah.
Because then I can do, Cahill in next week and a premium. And you've got the same result. Over 2 weeks, you've brought in 2 rookies and 2 premiums.
Correct.
The factor is you had the premium for an extra week.
Yeah.
But that's the really tricky part. Obviously, I think in an ideal world, MJ, we would have loved Gold Coast to play that early game.
Correct.
We could take Rankin.
Yeah.
We could see what a Waitman or a Cahill does.
Yeah.
Do we need them next week? Yes, they've scored great. I'll get them next week and I'll do a premium this week. No, they haven't. I'll take Simpson and do a double up. But as I said, that just complicates it so much because we don't have that luxury of seeing what we have to deal with next week.
Yeah. And again, if the formats choose, and all formats have said, look, they are rules on the run this year, unashamedly rules on the run, and understandably so. No one could forecast some elements, some they could, but some elements of what this year has thrown us. Does this 2 trades a week, do they increase the amount of trades available to us? Not give us more trades, but do they give us 3 trades a week we could choose to use? Do they choose to give us more trades? Do we need to be more conservative, or do we have that opportunity right now? Do you get aggressive and go after it? Because if the average team, if we're talking 33, 36 games over a 20-day period, 5 days is the average break. About 5 point something if you want to do the real funky maths of it per team. Let's talk about the best 2 cash cows and linking it into the fixture. Sam Simpson hasn't played a lot of footy. Now, he played a fair bit, VFL last year, but he's battled some injuries himself, whereas an Isaac Rankin, he's been on an AFL list for 18 months, and only last week was his first chance where he was finally fully fit to get his body there. Do clubs choose to be more conservative with certain players, both the older and the younger? In fact, right across the board of going, he's a little bit sore, we're going to give him that extra week, we're going to give him the 11 days break. It seems like that's almost what Geelong have done this week too with Mitch Duncan, isn't it? They've gone, look, we're not going to risk him this week because we're going to give him an 11-day break so that he's absolutely cherry ripe for round 8, whereas he could have been okay to go if it was a Sunday game. So these start to become an extra layer of challenge for coaches to navigate too of, okay, someone like an Isaac Rankin, phenomenal debut. I think in SuperCoach, if I would suggest he's a more important priority as a downgrade than Simpson. For me, given he's got a bit more job security, but in the contrast perspective, you might say, but he's also got more likelihood of being managed because of the health of his body that has shown of the durability over the past few years.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, MJ, is that if we get restings per se, if there's a future rookie that comes in, and due to the nature of the schedule, they miss a week. That means you're waiting an extra week for the cash generation. So my mind immediately goes to, if we grab rookies this week, there's an influx in cash straight away.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, if Simpson and Rankin score 50, they're going to make about 50K this week. The beautiful thing of the, prices moving after 2 weeks is, in previous years, if you had a great first score, it would only count once in your price movement. That's not the case anymore.
No.
That's actually counting 3 times. It takes what you priced at the first week, it takes what you scored the first week, and then the second week.
Yeah.
But it actually stays in there a little bit more, which is why we're seeing that typically your second price movement is actually more than your first, which is not how it's been
for years.
In previous years. Yeah. So I think about that. If you do the double downgrade, those guys are generating cash now. You've got 2 weeks before we get to this condensed fixture in round 9, where these guys have made quick cash for you. And if something happened and you had to move them on to get the other moves you wanted to get made, they will have made that cash by now.
Yeah.
Whereas if you wait another week, that person has one less game to generate that cash. Obviously, the flip side is you don't have that premium. Between Simpson and Rankin, I totally agree, MJ. The condensed fixture hurts a guy like Rankin with his body history and how valuable he is to the club. Like you mentioned, it's taken 18 months to get this first game out of the way. As brilliant as it was, Gold Coast has no intention of risking him if there's any doubt. And it's, unfortunately for Isaac, it has been a lot of soft tissue stuff as well.
Yep.
And if you've watched him play at all, and I think most people have in some capacity, even if it was just the highlights of his goals, he's so explosive, and that is such a valuable part of his game that you're not taking any chances on that. The flip side to Simpson, who before this condensed fixture, and I think pretty much every player in the AFL has less job security than Isaac Rankin at the Suns. He's almost the first pick. But you look at Geelong's list, like you mentioned, MJ, Gary Ablett's probably going to get rested.
Yep.
Jack Stephen was rested last week, comes back in. The Cats gave Duncan another week. They play on the Monday in round 8. So they've got an eternity between this Thursday night game with Collingwood and then all the way to playing Freo. So if I look at Simpson, I think, okay, they're probably going to give Ablett his rest. They might rotate a few of their older guys through and maybe he can stay in the side and just get enough games. Like I mentioned, even if he just plays the next 2, there's 100K.
Yeah.
If he can play 2 or 3 of that 4 condensed fixture, which I think is very feasible as his 4th year in the AFL system. He was on the rookie list and he had a great VFL season, winning the best and fairest for the Cats. So while he's a skinny type of player, he clearly has developed a lot. And I think that's something we have to acknowledge, MJ. Some of the scores he's got in the past, he's a different player.
Yeah, they're 2-3 years ago. Yeah, that's a first-year player.
Yeah, they took him off the list, put him on the rookie list. He proved himself at VFL level in a good Cats team. And we know, you look at some of the emergencies these guys have at Geelong every week, they're about as deep as you can get.
Yeah.
And I feel like they will take advantage of that. And as I mentioned, if you've already got 2 weeks in a row of Simpson, which I think the way he played on last week, he deserves that.
Yes. And
I think he'll get that with the management of the other players. Even if he just gets 2 of that next 4, he's probably made somewhere between 150K at a minimum.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, that's something you can't sneeze at. The hard thing is it is really tricky to take on a guy like Isaac Rankin, I think. As I mentioned, even if he scores in the 50s and 60s, you know that job security is going to be there.
It's huge.
Long term. And I haven't seen a rookie named so far this round that I feel confident in going, I'm happy to
as a downgrade,
them. Yeah. I think maybe a Will Gould might be the type of player with the pedigree he's got as a junior.
Yeah.
The absolute plethora of injuries that the Swans have had to deal with. Because I've got to accept myself, if I take 2 downgrades this week, I have to go 2 upgrades next week.
Absolutely.
I have to miss because I can't go another week unless the only way you get around that, MJ, is if you think that rookie is going to score as a premium. Like if you're so convinced that there's 100-point player in there, which even with Simpson and Rankin who have 100-point performances on the board,
no one predicted that. Let's be honest.
I'm still grading them as 60 to 70 type guys at best. If they gave me that for a month, I'm ecstatic.
Absolutely, it is.
So I have to be confident that I'm going to pass every other rookie next week and make 2 premium moves.
And this is the dilemma coaches had last week too, where they're going, do I get Jake Arts? Do I not? Well, now all of a sudden they've got a second-tier cash cow. Maybe you went as Shane McAdam because he's got at least some job security, a couple of weeks ago at the Crows. But now you're double downgrading this week again after potentially doing another double downgrade last week. And now you're having to make the decision around Simpson without full squads completely revealed. Yes, you'll have an hour or so where you'll say, okay, which other guys are at least in the 26? But there'll be 6 teams with the Sunday squads and the Monday squad that you just don't know what's going to absolutely play out from it. And then what we said, what the formats do to navigate the multi-buy rounds, I don't think they're going to make that announcement early next week. I think it's going to be closer to when we're making our trades. If the AFL only announce a fixture there.
Last week we also mentioned this is why you have to take care of the immediate problems.
Yeah.
Think about if you've waited on a Matt Rao.
Yeah.
Now you've got to go, okay, I need to get this round money back onto my field.
Yeah.
And that's what I think about with Segler. Whether you go Segler up or down, I don't think it matters. I think you have to move a player like that on that has an injury that, unfortunately, a 2 to 3 week injury is now long-term because it could impact 5 to 6 games.
Absolutely.
I think the last week, if you moved on a Starcevic, it's probably a great move.
Yep.
I think the hard thing now is if a player like him, if he is named or a Buderick, you're going to have to just ride those guys. Even a Curtis Taylor with the injury news to a Segler, it's a low priority because even if he loses 20K, having him available for a best 18 could be handy enough. As I said, if you carry a Segler, you've got a 0 next week. At least there's a possibility of those guys playing and chipping in.
Yeah. And then you add into the fact he might miss round 8. And if round 9, it's the Hawthorn multi-buy, this one I'll just hold for a week and see, could all of a sudden turn into 4 weeks where you've just got 400, 500K player sitting on the bench doing nothing, and that money is not being activated to turn into points on field. And so I agree. I think deal with the priorities of injuries that you know of first and foremost, and then let that inform the trades you make.
Yeah, and I have no problem, as I said, people going Segler down to Rankin.
No, none at all.
They really want those rookies because at least the next week, you've got so much cash to deal with. You can take your pick of what you want to do. You've got an absolute a million options.
Yeah.
As I said, if you do Curtis Taylor to Rankin and then you carry Segler in, now you're trying to work out, I wish I had Curtis Taylor. That cover would actually be handy from a donor.
Correct.
Like, you have to just take care of that immediate issue. We know Segler's out for those Segler owners. We knew Rao was out last week.
Yeah.
People that were worried about losing, I won't trade Rao because he's not going to drop in price. This player will. But as I said, if that player plays, you might just want those points. That 30 to 40 points this season, MJ, like you said, you do that for 3 to 4 weeks.
That's a lot.
And it makes a massive difference in the rankings. So I think it's a really tricky week for all those reasons. And as always, we just need to gather as much information as we can. And that's why, personally, I just seem to be gravitating more to that double downgrade path.
Yep.
As I said, gives me a chance to see what the fixture is, where the premiums are going to miss. And also, at time of recording, I have not seen a rookie that I have enough confidence in, whether it's job security or scoring, that I'd go, you know what, I'd rather have a premium and Gould, than have these 2 rookies now, because we still have to worry about cash generation. I think a lot of teams are at the point now where they're looking at the rookies they've got on the field, and I know I'm in a similar boat, and they just haven't made enough cash to want to trade them out.
Yeah.
So I do need players that are going to come in, and I'm not too concerned with the scoring, but if they can get up to that 300K mark in SuperCoach, now you can actually start bringing in some players that can contribute to your side.
Yeah. And one of the things that's fascinating for me, what coaches do this week too, is in Dream Team, unless you nailed the mid-price guys, unless you got the Simpkin, the Ridley, the Bailey Smith types, chances are you're really staring down the barrel of a very unlikely, especially if you had to do a couple of sideways moves with injuries or misfired selections, you're staring down the barrel of potentially an incomplete side of premiums where you are looking at guys like a Tom Duday and going, you're my D6 for the year. what probably is scaring some coaches off in that format, a little bit different in the others where AFL Fantasy, 2 trades a week, use them and lose them, play that break-even game, absolutely still a relevant point. SuperCoach, it's close enough to 2 trades a week. If you've been a little conservative on 1 or 2 of your weeks so far, you're probably still okay in terms of trades to get to a completed side. Whereas in Dream Team, if you double downgrade this week and potentially you're only getting 100K, maybe tops of 150K, out of 2 trades. So let's say 220,000 is the peak you're going to get. Is that enough money out of those 2 downgrades to warrant it, knowing full well that with the condensed fixture, the likelihood that AFL teams are going to give a lot of players that are fit on their list chances to play games this year? There could be a ton of other cows, maybe not as great a job security or as great a scoring potential, but at least would net you another 20 or 30K in the bank on a McInerney or a Noah Anderson or something of that nature. So for Dream Team coaches, unless we get more trades, I'm really intrigued if the double downgrade is the right move for coaches in that format or not.
Yeah, that's a really tricky one, MJ. And like you said, if you haven't generated enough cash, it's almost a moot point. Like, I'd much prefer to see a coach be super aggressive and trade a premium player
Go up
and make 150K going down to someone they really like.
Yeah.
Because, maybe you predict a couple weeks ago that, Segler doesn't look right, maybe he's carrying something, and you make that move. If you do that, now you've got an advantage on the field and he gets injured afterwards. Like, there's no point trading a rookie to another rookie who has poor job security.
Yeah, for 100K, yeah.
For 100K. And even some people, MJ, obviously are dealing with like a Georgiadis.
Yeah.
Or a Kavara.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I really have to say, guys, it's not worth it.
Cop the
it's
donut.
not worth going sideways. You might as well just hold your ground, hope they come back in.
Yeah.
And if they don't, we're past that point of the season where you can do those restructure type moves. If you have to eat a donut and lose yourself
30
or 40 points,
whatever.
It's not worth the trade of bringing in someone who could potentially end up in the same boat as the player you traded out.
Yeah, I agree.
So you just got to be really careful. And I think we all know that going for that value player is going to be vital this year. We've got an absolute gift with Bailey Smith.
Mm-hmm.
We've been given a gift with a Mitch Duncan coming up in the future.
Yep.
Zach Merritt's had a few quiet games.
2 weeks.
I think the days of going for the very top guys, I think the only ones that maybe break the rule is a Max Gawn in Supercoach.
Yeah.
I think Lockie Neal, he's got the ball this week. You probably have to wait on that.
Yep.
But these type of guys are genuinely separating themselves by 20 to 30 to even 40 points from, Lockie Neal to the 8th midfielder.
Yeah.
And when you've got that type of differentiation and you've got a captaincy as well that you're throwing into the mix every week,
yeah,
maybe that's where you can make the dollars count. But again, that's why Elliot Yeo was so popular last week, because people thought for the price he can probably get close enough. And that
to a gaff
100K
type. Yeah.
is going to go a long way where we don't have a ton of cows. It's amazing because Matthew Rao's pretty much given us 3 upgrades by how well he did.
Yeah.
But as I said, the rest of them, they're really hitting walls, whether they've got injured or form. Bennell, Pickett, McInerney, all of who should be in the side this week,
Yes.
I predict. But at the same time, they're still in that low 200K mark. So it gets really awkward where you've just got to hope they keep going. And that's why Starcevic was so popular for so many people, because he'd actually generated some cash.
Yeah. And now he's sitting there potentially going to lose some for you. A little bit like
he might be more valuable just having around MJ as a cover guy.
Yeah, exactly. Use the DPP.
And that's the thing. If you've got a Segler, you're already in a range where you can do almost a sideways move to another premium. And as I said, if the more best 18 comes into it, those rookie scores, if they're volatile, you might get away with it. You might dodge a bullet and have a Curtis Taylor 15, be your 19th player that week.
Correct.
So it's a lot of question marks, but I feel like the crux of it this week clearly is you take Simpson and Rankin. If you jumped on one of them early, I think you'd be crazy if you have the cash not to take an upgrade. I don't think that a Day, a McPherson or a Hibbard
is worth it.
Are vital enough
I agree.
To not take the premium points. I think those two boys, with what they've done, when you've got that on the board and you know that it's going to affect their price for a couple of weeks, that's the massive appeal, because as I said, you've got pretty much 100K guaranteed if they can get on the park for 2 weeks.
Yeah, if you've got Rankin or Simpson already in your team, you need to be looking to get the other in and looking to be moving on a upgrade into your team where you can. If you don't understand moving for the double downgrade, because it does open up, as Kane and I have talked about already, it opens up opportunities for you next week. Once we know what that condensed round 9 to 12 looks like, the teams that are off, and what the formats choose to do to how we're going to navigate that intense period of time, especially, but then it'll give us some information for those last 5 weeks as we head to finals. How are they going to choose to approach the game? It gives us enough information. And yes, luck is a factor, and it always has been. And with years like this, it's increased a little bit more, no doubt about that. But still, coaches that make smart, astute moves are going to be rewarded. There's a lot of negativity in the fantasy community about this year, Kane. It's different, it's annoying. Actually, I'm quite enjoying the unique challenge of this year. I don't think we're ever going to get a year like this again. And your ranking, if you're having an absolute stinker, don't worry about it. Just enjoy the unique challenges of this year. When are we going to get a compressed season, 17 games, play each other once, prices changing as frequently as they are? No one's going to look back and go, you're a terrible coach in 12 months' time because you had a crappy ranking in this year. No one's going to do that. Now, if you win the whole comp, everyone's going to look at you like, wow, that is incredible, astute moving. But no one's going to look at you if you're having a cruddy year this year going, you're just a bad coach.
No, not at all, MJ. That's the thing. Again, the fun for me in particular is the planning, is the conversation, is the research. And again, we don't know everything. If we did, we'd be trying to win it every year. But that's the game, is you have to make informed decisions. And that's what I hope we try to give to our listeners, is that what we do know is Melbourne and Essendon have had their bye.
Yes.
So clearly there is an inherent advantage. If they fit your system, pick them, because you know you've got that advantage.
Yeah.
The rest, that's just guesswork at the moment. And that's why I said, the double downgrade gives you that option of seeing the fixture so you don't just trade into a premium who has a buy in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because that is a disadvantage. And as you said, if you would have a guess at when that may or may not be, go for it. And, maybe the points will work out. But we just got to deal in the small facts that we know at this stage. And, hey, Melbourne and Essendon players have that edge. If it's a 50-50, you'd be crazy not to go then.
Yeah.
Again, you couple it in with probably the 2 best rookies we've seen emerge in the season, MJ. I know obviously we had Matt Rao from the start.
Sure.
It complicates it massively.
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. I'm really tending towards, across all formats, to do the double downgrade this week is where I'm leaning to at the moment. Now, teams may change that. We may get a Will Gould, as you've said, who's one of those cash cows that I have confidence in. Harry Schoenberg from Adelaide, given the injuries to like a Rory Sloane. I'd have a little bit more confidence in it. Even then, he's not at a basement price, kind of rolling through there. And unless we get something Thursday night that we go, okay, there's a clear injury, there's a clear need, a clear opportunity, I think take what we know, bank that cash, hope you get some luck over this next 4 weeks, and then be as aggressive with your upgrading and trading as you can to get as many points on field. That would be my encouragement for you.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, MJ. We have to deal in those facts. And the facts we know is Isaac Rankin and Sam Simpson had incredible games last week.
Yeah.
And as a result, have an absolute launching pad for cash generation. An absolute launching pad that is bankable.
Yep.
If they just take the field, we know Simpson's already been selected, and I haven't heard anything about Isaac Rankin pulling up sore or anything of that nature. So I've got to think he's on the park. After that, we might be exaggerating how much teams will rotate their sides.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's only a player here or there. One thing we have taken away for a lot of these clubs is no travel.
Yep.
So, the day that they'd normally have to spend traveling back from a game, and then especially the clubs, the interstate clubs that have, are on a plane every second week.
Yeah.
If they're just based in their home and it's, a drive or something like that, maybe that does make it more feasible to play multiple games.
Shortened
quarters. We haven't even got
helps.
into the factor, MJ, of the news for Victorian clubs. They're going to be interstate. We've already seen Scott Pendlebury come out and say he's contemplating coming back to Victoria and leaving his Collingwood teammates for an extended period of time. So we haven't even got into all those, personal things. We've seen the awful situations Basher Hawley's had to deal with his mum and obviously a newborn as well. And obviously we wish him all the best. But we haven't even got into those personal things that are just going to happen this season.
Correct.
And that's why I keep trying to, as complicated as it is, you have to simplify it in my mind. And that's why I've come to sort of the point is that I think I can get 2 rookies in a 2-week period. Do I want the 2 this week? Or do I want 1 this week and 1 next week?
Yeah.
And that's what I think for me, I have to narrow it to that and simplify.
Yeah.
When the teams come out tonight,
it's going to
I'm going to have a look and see, and obviously we follow the news in the day, maybe we get a few more debutants named. But do I have more confidence in these guys who are named this week to debut than the Simpson and Rankin last week with what I know about their scoring? Yes or no? And then you try to attack the next week with those 2 upgrades and obviously hope you get a bit of luck with no premium injuries. And, you've just got to address what you've got. If you got Ben Long in SuperCoach, who a lot of people jumped on after the restart due to his massive score, get him out of your team. He's not playing the next 3.
Yeah.
Johnny Segler, the same. Give yourself the option in future weeks that you have as many possible players named as possible.
Correct.
We don't know if Tyler Brown will play, but he's got more of a chance than Ben Long, who's suspended. We don't know if Jared Brander will get back from his hip injury, but he's got more of a chance than John Segler.
Yeah.
And they're both not going to make or lose cash in that time.
Mm.
So if you've got a 50-50 and you know they're both out, move the premium, because at least it gives you the option in the future week to spend that cash. And that's what I'd recommend our listeners do.
Yep.
Look at your team.
Yep.
And as I said, just try to simplify. Hey, if you've got the luxury of an upgrade,
Go for it.
especially Max Gawn,
Get it.
with no buy, and him being almost impossible to attain with the cash generation, do it.
Yeah. Move on, Pitter.
Absolutely do it.
Exactly. No, I think that's key, and you're right. That key bit of advice you gave there is crucial. It's got to be based on the needs within your team. You might not be in the position to be able to get a Sam Simpson in Dream Team more than anywhere else, or even SuperCoach to an extent, because there's no value in that trade. But Rankin may be the more priority for you. Conversely, you're going to get Simpson this week because you know he's playing, you know you can get his score, and then you're going to see if he goes only the 40 or 50, I'm going to wait till Rankin's game, and then I'm going to inform my decision of what I do with my next trade. Do I do that upgrade? Do I move down and grab a downgrade? Take the information you know you have with the teams that are available to you and do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, that's spot on, MJ. That's all we can do, because we don't know. As I said, we've only got a few facts at the moment, and we just have to make the best informed decision and just try to set yourself up for future success. You know a few things, and like I mentioned, we'll get obviously a ton more information next week.
Yep.
But just give yourself the best chance to succeed. That's all you can do. You can't predict injuries.
No.
At this stage, we don't know who's got the bye when.
No.
At least if you look at your team, what are your major issues that are going to be around long term? And that's always, injured and suspended players. If you dropped, hey, you never know what will happen. The players might leave their team to come home, and that guy does get an opportunity.
Totally.
So yeah, just try to future-proof your team as much as you can.
With the nines.
And I think this week, we're very lucky because we've got options either way. There's plenty of premiums that you can go to.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of great cows you can grab as well if you don't have them.
Yeah, there's plenty of good information out there. I hope some of that conversation has helped you out. Before we wrap up this episode, Kane, I know I do need to let you go. A couple of questions of what people have sent out through us through Facebook and Twitter. Thomas Lee's got an AFL fantasy question for you. He says, thinking of trading Pitnet this week to a Gawn or a Goldie. Is Gawn worth paying that extra $100K for, or do I take Goldstein and save the money for another trade?
I think with this news now, MJ, you've just got to take Gawn.
Yeah.
If you know that, and then we don't know how AF will handle it,
No.
like all the other formats, but as we keep saying, we do know that Melbourne is buy free. So if I'm weighing that up, I'm taking Gawn.
Yeah, no, I am too. Tom Agnew wants to know, Matt Kennedy from Carlton had a heap of CBAs and is cheap, or cheap in contrast to other things. What's your thoughts about getting a Matt Kennedy in? Are you keen in any formats out for him?
Probably keepers, MJ.
Yeah.
Keepers in single season. I think when you're fishing in that awkward 300K type of pond,
yes,
you've actually, unfortunately for Matt, he's got to become almost a premium. Like I almost need 90-ish from there, here on in to be worth it. Tom Duday's sort of doing that in defence for a few coaches in the last few weeks, but I think in a keeper league, that's where you can really capitalise because, to be honest, he's come back a different player.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting those midfield minutes. Some people say his fitness wasn't there, but we know with Andrew Russell coming across to the Blues from the Hawks, everything I've read about how Carlton have responded to that is incredible. And clearly they're playing good football. And, Matt Kennedy's lost a few kilos and improved his fitness. And you've got to give massive credit to the kid for doing that. Again, it's not an easy thing to hear. You're not in the team. We need you to improve on this. But how he played against the Dogs, it looks like he's clearly done that. But I think in a salary cap format, it would have to be AFL Fantasy
only,
if anywhere.
Yeah, and I wouldn't do it then.
Because, as I mentioned, you're either giving up Simpson and Rankin, and if you do already have those guys, I'd just say let's just go up to a top-tier guy that you don't have to worry about for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough idea. Daily Fantasy, obviously, Coaches is the other place where you might like to look at him at the moment. Nathan Ayres wants to know, Starcevic, if he's named, which trade do you prefer? Pitternet to Gawn or Taylor to Whitfield? That's a good question.
I'm Pitternet to Gawn, MJ. I just think that you don't get many shots in a year to get a guy like Max Gawn, and that is the risk of not having him from the jump.
Yeah,
is that he will go on these rampaging patches where it's unattainable. And I think in terms of a captaincy option, Gawn gives you that.
Yeah.
Whitfield in this format of the game I'm talking about, it's not his style.
Yes.
We know how endurance he is and how hard he works at the end of games, and he gets so much ball. And also in a SuperCoach format, the way scoring works with his outside ball, it doesn't seem to be helping him this year as much as in previous years.
Yep.
So, I'm pretty clear-cut Gawn there.
Yeah.
And we haven't even got to that buy as well, MJ, which was news before Nathan wrote that question.
Yeah, correct. John, I can answer this question for you, mate. In SuperCoach, Ben Long, trading him to who? Mate, you go and get Isaac Rankin if you don't have him. If you're a Ben Long owner, he made you a little bit of cash at the start of the year. Not been as great as everyone had hoped he might have been, but if you're a Ben Long owner in SuperCoach and you don't own Isaac Rankin, pretty simple trade in my opinion. That's kind of one of your moves for the week. And then Michelle wants to know, what do you do if you already have Rankin? Do you take Simpson and an upgrade, or do you take Simpson and go and get another cash cow? What are you doing there if you're already a Rankin owner? Kane, do you take Simpson and upgrade, or do you take Simpson and another cow?
Yeah, I'm Simpson and upgrade there, MJ. Pretty clear cut. I just think those two are the clear ones that I want, mainly because of the score, and I think they have enough job security. As I mentioned, Will Day would be close, but he's a little bit more expensive too, and I'll just be taking those points. You've done super well to get one of those guys in last week.
Yep.
So keep plowing ahead with an extra premium on the field.
Yep, I 100% agree, man. Hey, I appreciate your work, spending some time with us, helping us through our fantasy footy teams.
No worries, MJ. Always a pleasure.
If you want to go and check out some of the articles that have landed for you now at coachespanel.tv, the break-evens are up. The brand new Ultimate Footy DPPs, they have been revealed. And also, we share with you some players in Dream Team and SuperCoach who we think are ripe for the picking, not just this week, but over the next few weeks. We'll keep analysing once the fixtures are confirmed, how the formats choose to approach these next few rounds of football. All the information you need is going to be at coachespanel.tv to help you navigate your fantasy footy year. And if you're loving the content you're getting from the Coaches Panel, there is also exclusive content available for you if you support us as a Patreon member. All the links for that are at coachespanel.tv. Good luck this week. I hope teams go your way and the decisions you make all land in your favour. Until we chat to you next time, good luck as you head into another week of fantasy footy.